Human bodyguard bleeds for alien diplomat, and she breaks rules for him. Major Elias Ward stood still as stone beneath the humming glow panels of Docking Bay 4, arms folded across his chest. His Earth-issued tactical suit didn't quite fit in with the flowing robes, mirrored helms, and ceremonial sashes of the alien delegates streaming into the Unity station. That was fine. He wasn't here to fit in. He was here to keep someone alive. A hiss of pressure marked the arrival of the Sireen Envoy shuttle. The craft was sleek, pale as bone, and completely silent as it settled onto the bay platform. The security detail stiffened. Elias didn't move. The Sireen were revered across the galaxy. Diplomats of unrivaled influence, bound by a centuries-old code of absolute neutrality. They were admired, feared even. Elias didn't fear them. He didn't fear much anymore. As the shuttle doors slid open, the temperature in the bay subtly dropped. She emerged like a figure from myth. Ambassador Kaelani of the Sireen stepped onto the deck with the grace of a trained orator. Tall, statuesque, with translucent lavender skin that shimmered faintly under the station lights. Her eyes were dark, unblinking, and ancient. No weapons, no guards. She didn't need either. Elias straightened. She approached, eyes scanning him as if dissecting his soul. "You are my human escort," she said, not asked. Her voice was musical but detached, as though spoken through crystal. "Major Elias Ward," he replied, nodding once. "Assigned by EarthGov Security Command. I'm here to keep you breathing." Kaelani's head tilted slightly, like an owl considering prey. "I do not anticipate danger. This summit is neutral ground, which makes it the perfect place to cause problems," Elias said. "I've read your file, Ambassador. You're high value and high profile. That makes you a target." She blinked once, slow. "Humans always expect violence, and you always assume you're above it." He gestured toward the corridor. "We'll see who's right." The Unity station was the crown jewel of the Accord worlds, a diplomatic stronghold hovering in orbit over a neutral moon. For the first time, all major species of the Orion cluster had come together to broker a new interstellar peace agreement. Earth's invitation was a recent and uneasy development. As they walked through the station, Elias tracked the layout like a soldier on patrol. Exit points, blind corners, guard rotations. Kaelani moved without fear or awareness of these things. "You are scanning for threats constantly," she observed. "It's called doing my job. Your file also says you were a war survivor. Battle of Narses. Wounded twice." He glanced at her. "That in your briefing, or did someone whisper it in your crystalline ears?" Kaelani almost smiled. "Almost. The Sireen do not whisper. But yes, I read your file in full. I selected you specifically." That made Elias pause. "Why? You are blunt, predictable, loyal beyond reason. I prefer humans who are honest. Most prefer humans quiet." "That is accurate," she admitted. They reached the summit chamber, a towering rotunda with gravity-reduced platforms for each attending species. Kaelani ascended to the Sireen pedestal, flanked by nothing but her own presence. Elias stood at its base, eyes always scanning. He could feel the tension thickening already. The summit had barely begun, and already a half-dozen factions were glaring across the chamber. Someone coughed in a tone that seemed weaponized. A reptilian diplomat chittered an insult in binary. The air was volatile. He muttered into his comm link. "Command, this is Ward. Atmosphere's got claws. Be advised, something's going to break." But didn't. Not yet. Kaelani returned to him after the first session. "I can feel it as well," she said. "An undercurrent, like shadows with teeth." Elias looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't as cold as she seemed. Not entirely. "You're scared," he said softly. She didn't deny it. "I was taught never to show fear," she whispered. "But you make it seem acceptable." He gave a short nod. "Good. Fear means you're paying attention. Means you'll live." She met his eyes for a long, silent moment. That was the first time she didn't look at him like he was just a soldier. It was the moment the mask cracked, just slightly. Neither of them knew it yet, but something had begun. And soon, blood would seal it. The second day of the Unity Summit began under tension so thick Elias could feel it humming through the polished walls. Kaelani stood before the central podium of the assembly spire, her voice weaving measured tones across dozens of translators. Her species had a way of making language feel like music. Everyone listened, until they didn't. Elias saw it before it happened. His instinct spoke before his brain. A motion from the far balcony. Too smooth, too directed. A figure leaned against the railing, cloaked in diplomatic black. The glint of metal. Gun! Elias shouted as his body moved. Everything slowed. Kaelani froze mid-sentence. Delegates scattered. Security reacted a second too late. The weapon, some kind of coil rifle, discharged with a silent flash. Elias slammed into Kaelani just as the blast struck. Agony. A searing, magnetic shockwave tore through his ribs. He crashed to the marble floor with Kaelani beneath him. The blast had passed through his side, scorching armor, flesh, and bone. He barely registered the second shot fired before the gunman vanished behind a shattering wall of glass. Ward! Kaelani's voice cut through the panic. He couldn't breathe. Pain bloomed in a widening spiral through his chest. He saw red, then black, then her face. Her pale violet hands were pressed against the wound in his side. They trembled. That surprised him. "I'm fine," he muttered, lying. Didn't even ruin the suit. "You're dying." Her voice was clipped. But under the diplomat's calm, there was panic. Elias saw her signal for Sireen healers. The others rushed to the scene. Flowing robes, medical drones, and clean, cold instruments. One scanned his vitals and looked at Kaelani, emotionless. Human. Unregistered for internal protocol assistance. He is non-Sireen. Unauthorized. Kaelani's expression hardened. "He saved my life. That is irrelevant. Accord Protocol 77 forbids biological intervention across species lines unless cleared by. I am the clearance." Kaelani snapped. Her voice didn't rise, but echoed with something far more dangerous, conviction. The healer flinched. Such action breaks neutrality. If you provide intervention, you forfeit your caste protection. She looked down at Elias. His face had gone pale, eyes fluttering. He whispered, "Don't break yourself for me." Kaelani leaned in. "You bled to keep me alive, Elias. I will not let protocol bury you." And then she did something unthinkable. She reached into her diplomatic crest, withdrew a glowing sigil, her bio seal, and placed it against the medtech scanner. The system flared. Authorizations rewrote in real time. "Override protocol," she ordered. "Heal him." The healers hesitated, then obeyed. Micro drones unfolded, humming over his wound. Stims flowed into his veins. Bone began to reknit. Tissue regrew under synthetic mesh. And Kaelani didn't look away from his face once. Hours passed. Elias woke in a sterile Sireen recovery pod, stiff but breathing. Every movement ached, but the pain was dulled by care he knew EarthGov couldn't afford. Kaelani sat across from him in a posture not quite diplomatic, arms crossed, eyes unfocused. "You broke your law," he said hoarsely. She nodded. "I'm no one to you." "Why?" She looked at him fully. "You made a choice. You didn't calculate, you didn't hesitate. You acted. You shielded me with your own body. That was not diplomacy. That was instinct. Devotion. I was doing my job. You were doing more than that." A long silence followed. Then she added, "The council will summon me. I will be censured. You might be removed. Yes, or worse." Elias shifted in the bed, gritting his teeth. "Then I owe you twice." "No," she said softly. "We are even." She stood to go. Before she left, she paused in the doorway. "Your people speak of loyalty like it is a weapon," she said. "Now I understand why." And then she was gone, leaving Elias alone in the silence. But not abandoned. Not anymore. The Sireen Council's chambers were silent as death. Ambassador Kaelani stood before a semicircle of crystalline thrones, each occupied by a figure more ancient, more adorned, and more disapproving than the last. Their faces betrayed nothing. Not disapproval, not sympathy, only the cool, immutable expression of judgment passed through generations. Your violation of Protocol 77 has been verified, said High Counselor Thesari, his voice a chime of ice on glass. Your sigil override has been logged. You engaged in unauthorized cross-species intervention. I preserved life, Kaelani replied. That is the essence of diplomacy. That is not your place to decide. Emotions cloud judgment. You acted on impulse. I acted on principle. Gasps. Even the lower scribes looked up from their datapads. You risked everything. Your position, our neutrality, for a human soldier? Kaelani raised her chin. He risked his life for me. Without question. Without calculation. He did what our caste has forgotten. He protected what mattered. Silence. Then Thesari's voice returned, sharp. By our laws, you should be stripped of title and cast into silence. Your name forgotten. Your legacy erased. I know, she said. But you will not be, Thesari added after a long pause. Because our allies, our enemies, now watch. To punish you would make a martyr. And we do not waste assets, even broken ones. Kaelani bowed, not out of submission, but acknowledgement. A warrior's bow. As you wish, counselor. Meanwhile, Elias walked the Unity Station's lower concourses with a limp and a purpose. He wasn't cleared for duty, but he didn't care. His instincts were screaming, and instincts were why he was still alive. He reviewed the security footage for the 100th time. The shooter had known exactly when and where to strike, just as Kaelani spoke about Earth's trade alliance. That wasn't coincidence. Computer, scan all diplomatic staff logs for irregular clearance activity within 6 hours before the attack. A list popped up. Most were routine, but one name pinged twice. Envoy Helvurus, a delegate from the Rithari Ascendancy, known rivals of the Sireen. Elias narrowed his eyes. Helvurus had vanished after the attack, citing health concerns. Too convenient. He tapped his comm. Kaelani, we've got a leak. That night, they met in a secluded alcove off the summit rotunda. No guards, no robes, just quiet. Kaelani wore a plain tunic, still regal, but unadorned. Elias leaned against a support column, his side still tight from healing. Helvurus planned the attack, he said without preamble, or at least gave the shooter access. He left the station shortly after, all cleared with falsified Sireen security codes. Kaelani's eyes narrowed. We would never authorize his clearance. No, Elias agreed. But someone close to your delegation might have. She folded her arms. This is bigger than we thought. It's not just a rogue attack. It's political subterfuge. They want to tank the Serene Earth Agreement, Elias said. And they nearly did. If you hadn't broken your rules, I'd be in a morgue and the Alliance would be ashes. Kaelani stepped closer, her voice lower. I do not regret saving you, even if I've shattered tradition. Elias didn't speak for a moment. Then he offered a quiet, gruff smile. You said we were even, but I think I still owe you. You owe me nothing, she replied. But if you wish to repay me, help me expose whoever betrayed this summit. His smile faded into something harder. Gladly, they stood there in the half-light, two figures from opposite worlds joined by blood and broken codes. No longer just protector and principal. Now they were allies. Perhaps something more. Far above them, in the orbiting ring of the station, Helvurus watched from a darkened holocom chamber, his claws tapping the armrest of his private shuttle. The plan had failed, but not entirely. Two pawns moving like queens, he muttered. Interesting. A new strategy formed in his mind. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. They met in secret now. Not out of fear, but calculation. Kaelani's diplomatic authority had been weakened by her breach of protocol, and Elias, still officially recovering, wasn't supposed to be conducting security investigations. But neither of them cared. The summit was still in motion, and behind its polished facade, the game had turned deadly. He's baiting us, Elias said, sliding a schematic across the table in the abandoned conference room. Helvurus didn't vanish. He relocated. His shuttle still docked in the private embassy ring. He's protected under diplomatic immunity, which means station security won't touch him. Then we must act outside their boundaries, Kaelani replied, her voice calm but steely. As he has. That'll burn every bridge you have left. She looked him in the eye. Bridges can be rebuilt, Peace cannot if it dies here. Elias nodded. Then we finish this. Together. They breached the Rithari sector during the station's artificial night cycle, slipping past sensor barriers using stolen access codes and the distraction of a scheduled environmental flush. The corridors of the private embassy ring were eerily quiet, lit by a dull red glow and lined with ornate decorations meant to intimidate rather than welcome. The Rithari liked to remind everyone they were predators. Sharp angles, bone motifs, low growls from the decorative sentries. Helvurus waited for them in his personal suite, flanked by 2 guards. His spined crest rose with amusement as Elias and Kaelani stepped in. I wondered how long before the rule breakers came to me directly, he purred. You tried to assassinate a neutral ambassador during a summit, Elias said. That's not just treason. That's war bait. Helvurus stood, his movements slow and deliberate. The Sireen grew too comfortable. You humans too ambitious. We merely corrected the scale. Kaelani's voice was ice. You sought chaos. No, Helvurus said, stepping closer. I revealed weakness. A diplomat who breaks protocol for a bodyguard. A species that clings to sentiment over strategy. And yet, Elias said, here we are, standing, alive, together. Helvurus sneered. Do you think you've won? That you've preserved this fragile dream of unity? The cracks are already spreading. Elias looked to Kaelani, then back at the Rithari. Maybe, but sometimes all it takes is one crack to show where rot is hiding, and one voice to call it out. Kaelani stepped forward, withdrawing a sealed data shard. This contains evidence, she said, of your sabotage, communications, financial trails, and the manipulated clearance logs. It's already been uploaded to multiple Accord networks. In hours, your immunity will be revoked. Helvurus froze. You came here, he said, voice lowering, not to kill me, but to ruin me. Justice, Kaelani said. Helvurus snarled, but the fight in him faded. He waved them off with a clawed hand. Then go. Finish your alliance. Build your paper peace. But you'll never erase the truth. You are emotionally compromised. And someday, that will cost you more than your titles. Kaelani turned without responding. Elias followed. As the door sealed behind them, he said quietly, You just detonated your own career. I lit the truth, Kaelani replied. Let the old world burn, if a better one rises from its ash. Back in the Central Summit Hall, Kaelani stood again before the assembly. I acted against protocol, she announced. I aided a human soldier. I protected him. Some see this as weakness. She paused, scanning the crowd. But I see it as strength. For too long, we have hidden behind cold rules to avoid warm truths. Our allies bleed for us. It is time we bleed for them. That is not betrayal. That is bond. The hall erupted in reaction. Some cheers, some mutters of dissent. Elias stood in the wings, watching her, not as her guard now, but as her equal. Later, as the final agreements were signed, and Kaelani passed him a copy of the new charter, she said, They still don't trust us. Then we earn it, Elias said. Together. And after? He raised an eyebrow. After what? She hesitated, then stepped closer. After duty is done. After this war of words ends. Elias smiled faintly. Then I stop being your bodyguard. She tilted her head. And become. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because for the first time, they didn't need protocol to speak what mattered.